Are you rich? Well, our default answer likely focuses on the way in which we currently evaluate our financial situation. Is money what actually makes us rich? Is it possible to effectively address realistic short and long-term financial goals without sacrificing our health, relationship, ethics, or other elements that are important to living a full life? Or are we stuck having to choose between our money and our life? Welcome to the latest episode of the Health, Wellness, and Performance Catalyst. I'm your host, Dr. Brad Cooper, co-founder of the Catalyst Coaching Institute. Today's guest is Dr. Shannon Hayes, author of the thought-provoking book, Redefining Rich, which I expected to be filled with the typical blah, blah, blah generic advice we've all heard 100 times. Instead, I was left considering a new way for Suzanna and myself to approach the choice between our money and our lives. Dr. Hayes and her husband walked away from their career paths and chose to forge a life on her family's frost-plagued mountain farm, starting up a small cafe in town. They built a business and a life from which we can all glean valuable guidance, regardless of our current setting, career path, or business startup status. And along the way, you might just discover a secret or two that brings true living back to this thing we call life. If part of that career path involves becoming a nationally board certified health and wellness coach, we'd love to welcome you into the Catalyst community and support your journey along the way. Our 360-degree tools and resources obviously include the NBHWC approved coach certification, but that's only the beginning. We have many, many free resources for our students, including assistance preparing for the national board exam, tips and tools on the business side of coaching, fun swag where all the profits go to charity, the annual Rocky Mountain Coaching Retreat and Symposium, ongoing CEUs, a coaching web portal, and so much more. Most importantly, at least we think, we're here for you consistently. Send us an email, results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com, and you are not going to have a salesperson respond. Instead, you'll hear directly from Suzanna, myself, or our core team of mentor coaches like Sabrina, Susan, or Mary to help you figure out what is best for you, whether you're already certified and you're looking for that next step, or you're looking to make that entry into this career. We're here to make a positive difference in the world, not see how many people we can push through our training. We'd love to have you join us if that's the right fit for you. Now, it's time to tap into the wealth of wisdom from author, chef, CEO, and happy napper, Dr. Shannon Hayes, on the latest episode of the Health, Wellness, and Performance Catalyst. Shannon, let's jump right into this. Welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
So your book, Redefining Rich, what are we talking about here? And this whole idea of true wealth. What do you mean true wealth? What's the difference between true wealth and false wealth? Just lay it out for us. What are we talking about here?
Well, Redefining Rich was the book that I wrote. I always write to understand my learning process. I'll say that right up front. And Redefining Rich came about as a result of me going through a crisis because I come from a family of farmers. I am a third generation farmer. My daughters are fourth generation farmers. And there's a joke in farming. This is if you ever want a wine cellar, just lock a bunch of farmers in a basement because we are so conditioned with the way that America's food policy is to just think of ourselves as victims. And when I took over my family's business, I had to figure out how to unravel from that because it's very easy when you are in one of the hardest businesses in the world to think of yourself perpetually as a victim. And I started recognizing that if I'm a victim, why am I so unwilling to leave this way of life? And is it just pure stubbornness? Is it pure stupidity? And in a moment of crisis, I sort of went out into the woods for a couple of days, unplugged my phone and ran away from the business. About a mile up the road. Just, it's not hard to go where cell phones don't work to unplug around here, and gave it some real serious thought. And I realized if farming generates such a lousy paycheck, then why am I still here? Why do I show up every day? And I realized it was for the true wealth. And I recognize, particularly in farming, you can have poverty level wages, but you can be living like a king. And that is because as farmers, especially as sort of organic, small scale farmers, we generate a lot of what I call true wealth. My husband and I work together every day. I was able to keep my kids home with me while I grew the family business, and I was able to homeschool them. So they were here. My whole family and my parents were together all throughout raising kids, all these years that I've been working. I've been with 3 generations every single day, all day long. Maybe some people wouldn't consider that true wealth.
No, stay away.
But for me, it's actually what I wanted. But more than that, I didn't want to go into an office. I wanted to be near the stone walls and the flowing streams and the pastures, and I wanted to be eating good food. And so I started recognizing the reason why I was here was not for the paycheck at all. It was to have all the things that other people go and get a paycheck to try to get. I was already there. I was there with my family. I have, my friends walk in and out. The cafe is only open 1 day a week, but my friends walk into the cafe all the time while I'm working there, and they drop in. There's no boss to yell at them. I have my friends around. I have my family around. I have beautiful views. I have mountain fresh air. I can go hiking every single day of the week. And that all is true wealth, as opposed to normal, ordinary, boring, conventional financial wealth, which is certainly nothing to sneeze at. We all need some money, but it's very narrowly defined in terms of dollars in the bank. And sometimes you realize when you want the life that you dreamed about, if you only think of wealth in terms of dollars in the bank, you're going to miss the great things. And you're going to spend a lot of time trying to earn enough to have the true wealth that you might be able to have directly without worrying about how much money is coming in.
Well, and I think what I appreciate so much about you is you have the options. I think a lot of people will share this message retrospectively who don't realistically have another choice. It's like, oh yeah, I chose this. And you're like, what else could you do? Not much, but that's not true for you and your husband. You have all the options in the world, your backgrounds, your educations, et cetera, et cetera. And in the midst of that, you chose this. I think your perspective it's incredibly valuable for us, and it's very unique. Now, this idea of enough is core to your book, core to the guidance. Help us get our arms around that. You've talked a lot about what that means for you, your life, the things you appreciate. Can you help those of us who aren't in that once a week cafe, farm, kids, family, like we're not in that? How do we get our arms around that value when the treadmill is spinning and it's okay? We're doing fine.
Right. So I want to back you up and take you back to answer that. I want to take you back to just a couple sentences that you said before that, where you said, my husband and I had all the choices. We actually, it didn't seem like we had all the choices to begin with.
Okay.
And I think just about everybody feels that way, particularly when you're living in sort of a scarcity mindset. Oh, I have to have so much money coming in order to have the things that I want in my life. And my husband and I were just like that. We thought that those were the things we had to have. And, but there was a moment I had finished up my PhD. So yes, I did have that education working in my favor. And I was offered an opportunity to start teaching with that degree. And it was shortly after we were married, and I had just gotten this offer, and it was going to be on the track that we thought we had to be on. And well, prior to that track, I should say, he had the job that was going to support everything. He got fired. So one of the reasons why it looked like we had a lot of options was because we had certain options taken away from us.
Sure.
He was fired. I was offered an opportunity to start teaching, and I just became really angry and bitter. And we were going camping that weekend, and he just turned on me. He says, what is with you? You just got offered this opportunity and you're being a hag. And I drew in my breath and looked at him and said, I don't want to do this. When he says, well, then why did you go for a degree? Why did you go for a PhD?
What have we been doing, honey?
And he said, and I said, well, because I only ever wanted to write and farm. And he said, then why did you spend all that time on that PhD?
Yes.
And the answer was because I was afraid.
Huh.
And I was afraid that there was no other way to have what I wanted in my life unless I followed the script. So I think a lot of people, when you say you had all the choices, it wasn't that I had all the choices. I started off like everyone else thinking that there were certain choices I had to take and that there are certain things I had to do.
Well, and that use of the word script, I think, is pretty powerful. I think a lot of people do feel like they're living on a script.
Right. And when you're on that, then you tend to think you don't have a lot of options, when in fact you do. But you have to learn to look at them differently. And then the first thing you have to ask is the next sentence that you talked about 5 minutes ago, which was, what is enough?
Yeah.
And what is enough? It's funny. What I thought was enough was, a lot of money, like, wouldn't be considered a lot of money these days. But,
sure.
I have to have at least $50,000 a year income. I have to have this and that. No. What is enough? Let's ask that again. Well, I've got to be able to have, 2 cars, and I've got to, no. What is enough? And that becomes enough for me is, let's stop thinking about it in terms of dollars. Let's stop thinking about it in terms of possessions. Enough for me is people that make me smile and laugh. Enough for me is music, being able to play music. Enough for me is an afternoon nap and great food on the table and people around that table to enjoy it with. So let's take it back to what enough is. That is not only what is enough, but that is what's like wealthy living, if you ask me. Enough is to be able to go outside someplace and feel green grass beneath my feet. And we tend to think all of those things mean you are independently wealthy, so you can retire early, so you can play music, or so that you can buy your house that is in the Hamptons where you have a nice little backyard. Like we tend to equate it to financial achievements and aspirational achievements. And it is not. It doesn't matter what you did for a living, as long as you have those people around you who love you each day that you can be with. And that food can be purchased with a big paycheck, or it can be acquired in trade. It can be grown in your backyard. There are so many different ways to get these fundamental needs in our lives, and we have to think more broadly about them and more creatively. And then when we've defined what is enough, then how you can move forward looks like what Bob and I had, which gets back to your statement of you had so many choices. When you can really center in on what is enough, then we all have a lot of choices we can be making.
I love that. Now, let's chase a rabbit. Current enough and future enough. Any difference between those two? And what I mean by that is, I love what you're saying, and I can go all in. I'm like, yeah, Shannon, like exactly. And then I think, but we may want to be able to help our grandkids with school, and we may, whatever's on people's minds. So yes, I'm satisfied. I could be content with what I have now, but am I going to need it when I'm 70, 80, 60, whatever, 40, whatever, wherever people are in life? Did you two struggle with that piece of, now
Sure.
This is a great life for the next decade, but what situation will this put us in our 60s, 70s, 80s?
Okay. I am going to answer this very directly from my personal experience. And then hopefully people can take that personal experience.
Perfect.
And extrapolate.
Sure.
So did I grapple with this? Oh, yes. I am a habitual numbers cruncher. I always have a calculator at hand. It's like I self-soothe by doing mathematics.
Oh, you and me both, my friend.
And I loved books. I realized as I was coming into my adulthood, I was dealing with the fact, I remember someone I was teaching in some college program where they said, hey, all the faculty, they made us all take right brain, left brain tests. And it was my first teaching job. And I was given one of these tests and they're like, oh my God, Shannon Hayes, you are so far right brain. You're not even on the chart anymore. And I was sort of teaching and doing my education at the same time. And I started realizing, someone said to me, if you're that far right brain, you need to compensate. And I started reading books about financial planning and reading books about business because I started recognizing if I'm going to be as creative and right-brained as I am, then I needed to go out and learn some skills.
Fill those gaps.
And I started getting those financial skills and started really liking them a lot because they built opportunity. And what I started realizing is I'm working in this paradigm of abundance and enough. This is a choice I made because I am sort of this right-brained, creative kind of person. And I had to build in a financial model that worked in harmony with that. One of the things that I realized that we learned as we sort of developed and evolved was if you study the way this government works, you can either be really rich or you can be really poor. You can't be in the middle. But if you are self-employed, our tax system is set up to favor people who go into business.
Yes.
Because people who go into business and as lefty as I am a pro-business person, because when you have people who go into business for themselves, they do powerful things for the economy. They don't need to go on unemployment. And they don't need to go looking for jobs. And they're usually creating more financial opportunities for other people. Exactly. There are a lot of incentives. So what that means is the way the tax codes are written and the way our government policies are written is that you can have a low income, but if it's a business income, which a business income is higher, then you can get a lot of low income benefits and do very well financially. So what does that mean? My income is very low, but I put my kids on payroll to help run the cafe. My daughter was able to save enough working for me where she's in my own household, where I'm covering her food and her expenses, but she's also working for me, but I don't pay a lot of money, but she was able to save plenty of money. She could write her own checks to go to college and she never had to borrow any money. Now, do we go to 6-figure a year colleges? No. My kids are in the state system.
Yeah, us too.
But college, I have not had to write a single check for college. When it comes to building for the future, for retirement, again, it comes back to enough. My husband and I have a lot of pleasures that we really love. Like I said, we love music, we love hiking, we love good food. Well, we're not paying for that stuff.
Right.
And we want to be with family. So we built a multi-generational business. So one generation is supporting the next. My parents are not working as much right now because they're aging, but we continue to run the farm with the younger generations. So they're still on the farm. They're still involved with the farm. They didn't have to leave it. And we're still providing their food. The farm is still paying their taxes, their insurance, their expenses. So they identified enough as being with family, being with community, being on the farm. And now the farm covers those things that they need financially. And so am I banking that I'll have a generation coming behind me that will do the same? Yes. That is I entered a different financial model. I decided that the conventional retirement planning, Social Security planning, that is the conventional system would be just as risky as me creating my own system with my family. Family comes with a sense of care and love that the broader system doesn't have. So I invested very heavily in that. Okay. The other thing that we did is I don't make a lot of money individually. None of us individually makes much money. But you take 3 generations and you put them all together, well, we only need to own one tractor between all of us. We only need,
Right.
we can share a lot of resources. And what happens is our shared wealth becomes magnified wealth. We have been able to buy properties neighboring the farm. We've been able to create rental properties to have passive income streams, where my parents might have cash, Bob and I might have sweat equity, and and my children might be able to put in other physical labor. So we actually have massive wealth that we've acquired as a family because we have consistently worked together and kept it in the family and kept it in the community. So going into retirement now, I'm 48 years old, but my husband is 64, and we have rental properties. We have the cafe where we do work very, very hard, but we have the farm where we're doing less physical work and other people are doing more of the work for us. So we sort of transition and cycle based on what our abilities are physically. And it's sort of an abundance cycle where things keep getting taken care of as we cycle through our lives. Does that make sense?
It does. And that's great advice for the farmer, cafe owner. Is there application? Because I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs generically, not specific to what you're doing.
Right.
How does that apply to we have a lot of health and wellness coaches that start their own business, and how does it apply to that person that starts their own business or anything, you name it? Doesn't have to be a health and wellness coach, but someone who's as you said, an entrepreneur, single person to start with, maybe they bring on a few employees eventually. Can we extrapolate those concepts that you're sharing for yourself that work well in that setting, multi-generational, landowner, et cetera, to the person that's providing maybe a service industry role?
Right. So one of the things I talk about in the book is your income streams. And what you're touching on is the income streams.
Yes.
And the book talks about four primary income streams when you're doing your financial planning. And one of them is conventional employment. And one of them is self-employment or business income. One of them is non-monetary income, and the other is passive income. Okay, so conventional employment in Redefining Rich terms, that's meaningful work. So it's work that you go to, that someone goes to, gets a paycheck, but it better be meaningful. It better be something you really, really love, because as the book explains, employment income is the most expensive form of income because of the way we tax it in the US system. So that, as long as it's really honoring something that you feel called in life to do, that's great. Then there's self-employment income. And those could be coaches, solopreneurs, if you will. It could be people like me who are working in farming, who run a cafe. It could be anyone who's self-employed or independently employed, or someone who's starting their own company. And that's a great form of income, because that actually is the most affordable form of income because of our tax structure. And then the third type of income, which you and I haven't really gotten into yet, but becomes very key in this, is the non-monetary income. And this is income. These are things that you could do for yourself without having to go out and pay for them. It could be, and I talked a lot about this in another book I wrote called Radical Homemakers, but it could be learning to repair your own car. It could be fixing, mending your clothes, sewing your own stuff, cooking for yourself rather than going out to eat, growing your own food, canning. A lot of these things, it could be barter and exchange. Part of my non-monetary income is I worked a deal with our local internet company, and I have free internet at all of the properties that I own for myself and for subsequent generations, which racks up to a lot of non-monetary income. So these can be deals that you work, barter, exchanges. It can be gardening. It can be all kinds of things. But each bit of non-monetary income that you earn takes down your overall cost of living. And then the fourth
let's pause on that just for a second, because I want to clarify that for everybody. So everyone, and Shannon, please correct me, but what she's saying is that is worth more than the face value. So if she's saving, let's say, $2,000 a year in her internet costs, that's not $2,000 a year, because she'd have to make $3,000 a year in a job after
And pay
taxes, Social Security, Medicare, et cetera, and then pay the additional cost to the internet company. So that $2,000 that she's, in quotes, saving through this arrangement is actually worth $3,000 in income. Am I hearing that correctly?
You understood completely.
Okay. So keep that in mind, folks. That's a big opportunity.
So, yes, non-monetary income is not taxed, so it has very high value. And then the final is passive income. And passive income, in the words of a farmer, it's basically anything you don't have to do that doesn't require shoveling and scraping and working yourself into a sweaty lather every day. And what I recommend in the book, you take these 4 forms of income, choose 3 of them. You choose 3 in your household. So you don't have to do all 3 individually, but try to be in a domestic situation where you choose 3. If you really are living on your own, then you can still choose 3. And in the beginning, it might be some non-monetary, some self-employment, and a job. And as you age, you try to transition some of that income into passive. It could be financial investments. It could be in properties, like you buy a house that has an extra apartment in it, so you can rent that out, or you rent out a spare bedroom on Airbnb. That's a little bit more passive. You still have to clean, but it could be something like that. But you try to transition through and always maintain 3 forms of income. So getting back to somebody who might have a coaching business, a self-employment income, I still say you got to have 2 other forms. It could be non-monetary. It could be non-monetary and you have a side job, non-monetary, and you start developing some passive income streams. It's very important. And if you're somebody who's in the coaching, as you mentioned, that could be a book with royalties. It could be a Patreon account where you're getting patronage for some of the work you do publicly. It could be a lot of different forms, but basically that income has to happen without you doing hour for hour labor every single time to get it. And you move forward with that, and you try to transition more of your income into that as you age. Right. Out of your working years.
That's great advice. I love that. We're gonna be bringing that back up over and over. All right, I want to dig into the QOLS, quality of life statement. I enjoyed your book, but that was the section that I didn't just enjoy. I was like, Suzanna, my wife and I do an annual retreat where we just get away to the mountains with kind of like your thing, where no internet, no TV, nothing, just the 2 of us, the dog, and a whiteboard. And I brought your book to her. I'm like, okay, so this year we're doing a QOLS. So let's dig into this. Let's help people see how they would integrate this into their life, their business, the combination, et cetera. So first of all, what is a quality of life statement? And then I've got about 28 follow-up questions. Well, maybe not quite that many.
Okay. Well, I get the sense, Brad, that your listeners are entrepreneurial junkies. Is that right?
There's a mix of entrepreneurial junkies and human performance junkies. Okay. So they want a better life. They are looking for better.
Okay. So in both of those cases, they shouldn't be doing anything without a quality of life statement. And if they're going to listen to this one episode, they need to sign off at the end and go work on this, because in both instances, whether they're entrepreneurial junkies or human performance junkies, you can say yes to a lot of things, but you will not succeed in any of it unless you learn to say no. Yeah. And what happens with both of those temperaments, you keep taking on the next thing and grabbing at the next thing. Entrepreneurs are always looking for the next turn in the road, the next bend, the next business move, the next expansion. Performance people, how can I do better on this next thing and take on this next challenge? Okay. And that's all great, but it can cause you, that temperament can cause you a divorce. It can cause your life to fall apart. It can cause your family to fall apart. And so you have to balance that with that quality of life statement. And A quality of life statement means you and whoever you're sharing your life with on a daily basis need to agree on the things that you're going for. Now, you don't have to be in perfect agreement. It could be that one person really wants to be able to be running every single day of their lives, and the other person wants to be able to have coffee silently every morning. But you're agreeing on the basic landscape of your life and what you're after. My husband and I, we wrote out a quality of life statement very early in our marriage, where we knew we wanted music in our lives. We knew we wanted to be able to be outdoors. We knew we wanted our family to be together, that we didn't want to send our kids out every single day on a school bus. And we knew we didn't want to be commuting to jobs. It was pretty rudimentary. And it evolved over time to the point now where it got very simple for us, and we're running an entire business, and we tell our employees, we tell our kids, we tell our family members, anytime, all you have to ask is the decision that you're making going to nourish and restore family, community, and planet? And that includes yourself in that. So now it's just a very simple statement. But in the beginning, it was a couple paragraphs about all the things we wanted: time for music, time to be creative, time to write, time to take naps in the afternoon. And so it can be a simple statement. It can be several paragraphs. It doesn't matter. What matters is that all the members of the household agree to it, get it up on a wall, and then every decision you make has to go up against that. Because it is very easy when you're a human performance junkie or an entrepreneurial junkie to jump at the next opportunity.
Well said. So how does
you need to ask for each opportunity if it's going to feed into that quality of life or if it's going to destroy it.
And even just that phrasing is helpful, because it's not optimal performance, if you will. It's quality of life. So your word choice is exceptional. How is it different from a personal mission statement that was really got the momentum going in the 80s, 90s? That was the big thing, both for companies and for individuals.
It's fine, but you don't have to hire a $50,000, $100,000 a year consultant to help you develop it. It's a little bit more rudimentary. Some people move on and they actually get to that mission statement. I often found mission statements just got so watered down, I couldn't work with them.
But on an individual level, how would you differentiate the two?
Well, for one thing, your quality of life is going to have everyone in your daily household system participating.
Okay.
Any kid over the age of 8, I think, should be participating in this, and contributing to what they think. It's husbands and wives both. Two partners. You don't have to be husbands and wives. Whoever the adults in the household are, their words are going on this. It's not just about one person. It's about everybody saying, this is the world we're building together. And that all needs to get taken into consideration. And if you're really, really, you work on this and you find out that you're both trying to build opposite kinds of worlds, that's an important discovery to make. Because then you need to part ways. Or you find out, we're building different things, but we can flesh them out together, and it becomes an important dialogue because you figure out how to honor the other person's ambitions and daily values in that. My parents came from a generation that valued hard work above all else. Hard work, if someone said at your funeral that you were a hard worker, well, that was about the most honorable thing that could be said. And so for them, that meant 0 vacations. For them, that meant you work until you fall into bed at night. For them, that meant you work at the expense of a family meal. And by God, you never, ever uttered the word NAP, because that was a sign of lethargy and you were repugnant and to be shunned. So along I came and I realized, wow, I'm a lot more creative if I've taken an afternoon nap. If I do creative work in the morning and I nap, then I can do a whole lot of business work in the afternoon. And I can actually squeeze in 2 days for one day if I just take an afternoon nap. And I started to realize, like, cocktail hour, I freaking love cocktail hour. And a good meal, I'll do anything. I was willing as a teenager, I was working for free for my neighbors on their farm because they sat down and had a midday meal. And I just loved food so much. I valued it way more than any job. My brother had a job in town at the factory. He liked earning money. Like, forget that. I'll shovel manure every single weekend and clean out a barn and string barbed wire fence and throw hay bales. I'll work 5 times as hard as you. Just give me chicken and biscuits. Okay. And that kind of thing all goes into a quality of life where you start to realize, oh, I'm in it for the food. I am really in it for the food and the afternoon nap. Those things for me mean life is great. And when that gets articulated, well, that's an important thing when you're working with people, all adults coming together, when you realize, oh, no, I really don't value becoming department chair in a faculty someplace at universities, thus and such. I want chicken and biscuits and a nap. And I am willing to throw hay bales. I really don't care if I don't have 32 publications in academic journals. And then you start to make those decisions accordingly because society tells us all the time we should be making different decisions. And that quality of life statement becomes your compass to make the decisions that are going to work for you and the people that you want in your life.
So let's jump on that word, because I just made a note here to clarify for everyone, and please correct me if I'm wrong. This is not another way to structure goals, folks. This is the compass. It's not the map. It's the compass. Exactly. And then as you develop your map changes, et cetera, you continually come back to the compass as a measurement tool. It's a northern star. It's that defining tiebreaker with everything that you're doing. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes. And particularly if you're like me and you do have a bit of an entrepreneurial junkie tendency, it's going to help you say no to a lot of things.
Okay.
We all get asked, especially if we like to do our best and always perform. We get asked to do a lot of things and it will kill us. Yeah. We'll burn ourselves out. We'll burn out our relationships. And you need that quality of life statement to start deciding all the different things you need to say no to. And I say no first because there should be at least 10 to 20 no's for every yes that you take in your life. And you need to say no to a lot of things and say yes only to those things that make that quality of life richer.
Okay, so you've convinced everyone, 100% of the people listening, well, maybe not quite 100, but almost everybody's going, okay. Now, so how do I get started? Do they write out a list of the top 10 things they want in their list? Do they, what's the process of moving through this now? I want to do this. Where do I start?
Okay. The easiest way to start is to go over to my website, theradicalhomemaker.net, and download the workbook for free.
Perfect. Say that again, theradicalhomemaker.net
or sapbush.com. That's the name of my farm. Theradicalhomemaker.net was a previous book and title of my blog. If you go over to the blog on theradicalhomemaker.net, you will find a workbook, a Redefining Rich workbook. It's a free download, and it does take you through the questions on how to do it.
Okay.
But I can certainly talk you through some of these pointers right now.
Yeah, give us a few of the basics, but we'll have a link to that in the description so folks can pull that up.
Great. Yeah, they can go print this off and sit down, get away from the computer, throw the phone off to the side. I'm sorry, we all want to be listening to everything, but check out for a little while. Totally. Go on your retreat. Absolutely. And, for me in my retreat, it's just heading out into the woods behind the house. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be anything. Just get away from your telephone. Or make a pot of coffee, make some muffins. I don't know. Sit down with everybody and start with the core values. Have everybody talk about the things that are most important to them in their lives, their core values. Is it family? Is it community? Is it, living in harmony with the environment? Make a list of those core values. And after you have that, I recommend that people start listing the people that you want to populate your daily life? So it probably starts with the people in your household, I'm guessing. But there might be other people that you want. My parents are not in my household. They're down the road. But the reason they're down the road is because in Bob's and my quality of life statement, I wanted them in my daily life. I want my neighbors in my daily life. Mm. So that's why, I didn't decide to open a cafe in a place where there was an active population. My cafe, the story is in the book, but it's in the middle of nowhere. But it's because I wanted to serve my neighbors. I want my neighbors in my daily life. So list those people that you want there. Do you have special friends that you want to make time for? Certain neighbors you want to make time for? Family members you want in your daily life? That needs to be there.
Okay.
And then I want you to describe the home and the land surrounding you, the landscape, the home, and how you want it to be. Do you want kids in there? Do you want it to be quiet? Do you want it to be full of music? Do you want it to be absolutely serene? Do you want to have livestock around you? Because these days, it doesn't really matter if you're on a farm. You might want chickens in your backyard in a suburban area. You might want to see laundry and flapping in the wind. You might want to be a minimalist and have as few possessions as possible. You might want your kitchen to always be cranking out food. So you're going to accept that you're going to have crowded kitchen counters. Describe that home environment. Then move on to time. How do each of those people in your life who are helping you draft that statement, how do they want their days to look? How do they want their hours to be spent? And then back up a little more and say, what do you need in your life in order to enjoy it? For me, I need to write. When I take periods of time off of writing, my husband will tell you I become a very difficult person to live with. I mean, maybe it's like living with someone who's constipated. I don't know. But my husband's like, oh my God, she's not writing. I got to get away from her because I become neurotic. I become anxious. I become prone to depression. But if I am writing on a regular basis, this is like how I do spiritual communion. Yeah. And my husband finds me a lot better partner. So we all know, and now my family has also learned, I need that time to write. I've talked several times in the course of our interview today about napping. My mother has recognized that I'm a lot easier to work with if I have time to nap in my day. And I get a lot done too. My thinking is much more clear. My husband, he needs to be able to sit out on the porch with his guitar or his mandolin and spend hours playing. And when he does that, that makes him feel good about himself, about his life. It makes him feel good about his choices that he's made, about his work. And we have actually regular music nights with friends. We all get together. It's a potluck. We take out the instruments. There's a bass, there's a tuba, there's a recorder, there's fiddles, there's singing. And we need martinis and mojitos, and off we go. And we have our music nights. These are things that we just know we have to have in our lives. And when we have them, we know we're rich. We know we are living the life we want. And when they're not there, it doesn't matter how much money is coming in. We're living in poverty. And again, for me, it's a home cooked meal every single day. I hate eating out. I want home cooked food at all times. For someone else, it might be foreign vacations, or it might be they need to spend weeks in the mountains backpacking.
But you've identified it. I think that's the key. I think that, and we've talked about this in some of the blogs that we've done and some of the individual ones that I've thrown out there. But what I hear you saying, what I love about what you're saying is you create the vision. You clarify where you want to be. Life is not perfect. This is Earth. We have issues. There's stuff happening. But most of us don't take the time to say, this is what I'm looking for. And so we just go with status quo. And what
we
you're
do.
saying is identify it, clarify it, time, people, place, the things in your life, the things that are important. Now we've got this thing, this QOLS, and now by comparison, what do we need to adjust?
Right.
Oh.
And the other thing that it does is it helps us to be more honest. Because like I said, society is always telling us we don't want certain things and we do want others. Society is telling us we want the bigger paycheck. We want the promotion. Society is telling us we want the nicer house. We want the better neighborhood, the better school.
So what are we looking for?
What are we personally looking for? And the people that we care about, what are they looking for? Get it out on the table. It's making it honest. And then it's funny how much of what we actually really, really want, we're ashamed to admit.
Yeah.
For me, I'm going to keep bringing it back to that afternoon nap.
Yeah.
It's cheap. It doesn't cost the environment anything. In fact, it helps the environment because for God's sakes, I shut everything down for a little while. But I was ashamed to bring that forward to my family because the culture of work and work hard and be productive and generate and have economic growth was so domineering. So when we can find that small voice, this is what I value. I really value chicken and biscuits. I really value playing baritone sax in the local jazz ensemble on a Tuesday night and then having a beer with those people afterwards. These are the things I really value. I don't really value whether I become a New York Times bestseller or whether I have 1 million followers on Instagram. I don't really value, that we become a Fortune 500 company. These are the things that I want. Chicken and biscuits, good rest, time with my kids, Barry sax in a jazz band. These are simple things. And then it circles us right back around to where we started. That's how we start learning what enough is. And when we know that things, then we go for those things directly because life actually will let us have a lot of these things. We don't always have to have the big paycheck to buy them. We can actually go for them directly.
Well, and I'm guessing someone out there is listening and saying, like, that sounds great. You guys have it figured out. Congratulations. But that's pie in the sky stuff. And I love it's page 45 for those of you who have her book as we're going through this interview. You talk about the difficulty of then living it out. And I wrote this quote down because I loved it. You said, it's a friggin' hard problem, but it's ours and we chose it. And I began to understand how wonderful, very wonderful it is. It thrills me. It pulls me from bed in the morning with fresh ideas and determination. Unpack that for us a little bit because you're addressing that issue of, yeah, QOLS, that's great. Nice to have your pie in the sky. You guys got it worked out. But in the real world, that stuff never happens.
Right. Actually, no, worse things happen in the real world.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting at. Because, pardon the language, you can edit this out if you need to, but it's the shit sandwich. All right. Everyone gets one. Everyone chooses what one they're going to eat. And so that's my way of saying everyone chooses their problems. And you don't think that you choose your problems, but you do, because we all choose where we're going to spend our attention. And when you have a good quality of life statement, you are not just choosing all the happy, happy joy around you. You're not just choosing the glurpy purple and the flavor of ice cream in your life. You are actually choosing the problems. And I love hearing people say to me, oh, yeah, it's so easy for you. But remember where we started this conversation? I come from farming. It is one of the worst paid vocations out there. It is a vocation that has gone through crisis where people are subjected to depression, to suicide, to debilitating injuries. It is highly dangerous. So you can say, I've got the perfect life. I've got a really hard one. We were able to buy our farm because the last guy died rolling his tractor. Okay. I come from a hard line of work where a lot of divorces happen, where a lot of poverty happens. And I make it look good because I got tired of being a victim. And I got tired of being a victim. So yeah, it looks like I have pie in the sky life, but I actually have a really hard one. But what I realized was it's fascinating to me. And rather than choosing the problems that would come with sitting in a job someplace, working in a cubicle, serving on committees, and trying to appeal to a boss, I decided all of those problems didn't suit me. But the problems of farming did. How do we make it safer? How do we make it so that we don't work ourselves so that we're actually physically deformed as a result of the labor? How do we manage our finances so that I can sit down every week and pay every person I did trade with that week from a bank account that's in the black? It is hard work. And I realized that if I spent my time coming onto podcasts and telling you how hard it was and how awful it is, it's not doing anything for my own psyche. So what I recognized was, oh, these are problems that are interesting to me. And I think that's really important to notice. So you could say, I could come into you and give you the same, another whole interview telling you how hard my life is doing what I do for a living. Okay. I have people in my cafe every week who tell me I don't deserve what I earn. I have people who tell me I'm overpaid as a farmer because they don't think I deserve to be paid for the meat that we grow and that my employees don't deserve full, honest wages. Oh, I could tell you stories. But the fact is, I look and feel and sound the way that I do because those problems are fascinating to me. The problems of the regular conventional job and workplace are not interesting. If I was in that, I'd be really unhappy. But I wake up every morning and I look at the problems of farming and I've chosen them. They are intriguing. They do not go away. Every single day, I have to figure out how to take this hard vocation and make it better. And if I solved it, well, then I'd be on to something else. I'd probably be bored. And what we fail to recognize in life is when we choose our problems, they are fascinating and they get us out of bed every morning. It is not the successes that get us out of bed. It's the challenges. All right, I gotta spend some more time thinking about how I'm going to solve this. All right, I have overproduction of pigs. Okay, I left this market and now I have, too many chickens, or I'm not enough people are buying this way, or I've lost my livestock processing. I've got to figure out another way to pivot the business. These are all fascinating to me. And so part of why it looks like I have all these choices and all this happiness and joy is because I'm actually really, really intrigued by the problems. I'm not beleaguered by them.
So that's almost a test question for the listener
Yes.
who's saying, do I need to look at something different? Should I pursue a different career, different side business, some of these passive income options? The question is, am I engaged by the problems or am I annoyed by the problems?
Right. And I have had a lot of work opportunities where I was annoyed by the problems.
Yeah,
and that's what landed me over here. And, 98% of the population is not going to choose my vocation. I'll tell you that. Right. There's only 2% of us doing it. So I'll tell you 98% of the population does not enjoy these problems, but I happen to like them. I find them fascinating.
Well, that's transferable to any career. I love what you're saying here. I wrote it down, put a box around it. Everyone chooses their problems. And folks, if you're in a role where the problems you're choosing, and again, come back to that, we're choosing our problems. We all do. If that's not engaging me, then maybe I need to choose some different problems, and maybe that means something different with my career, my side biz, etc. Shannon.
And your quality of life.
Identifying it. This was awesome. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for doing what you're doing. You're making a difference.
I had a great conversation, and go get the handbook. It's free. It's easy.
We'll put it on there. Have a great one.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Did that help change your perspective? There were definitely a few concepts Suzanna and I are bringing into our own annual planning and pondering retreat this year. Thank you for tuning into the Health, Wellness, and Performance Catalyst. We mentioned a few weeks back that this podcast is now in the top 1.5% of all podcasts. So we are grateful, so grateful to those of you who've been sharing it with peers, friends, and especially those who have had our logo painted on your car and the side of your house. Just kidding. We haven't seen that yet. But if you've done that, please definitely send pictures. Now, folks, it's time to be a catalyst. This is Dr. Brad Cooper of the Catalyst Coaching Institute signing off. Make it a great rest of your week, and I'll speak with you soon on the next episode of the Health, Wellness, and Performance Catalyst, or maybe over on the YouTube coaching channel.